This video is going to go through some of the IB questions that have to do with quadratics and stats that you might see on the exam, and just give you some strategies. So the first one, we see a picture of a parabola. We have the actual equation, but there's a lot of variables in there. So the best hint for you always is to see if there's a point. And in this case, we have a point here and we have a point here. And so we know a couple things. We know that parabolas are symmetric. So right down the middle is the axis of symmetry. So right away I know that the x-coordinate here is 2.5. I don't know what the y-coordinate is. I'll find that later. And I can plug in a point. I'm going to plug in this 5, 0. So y is 0 when x is 5. So 5, that makes 5k minus 25. So basically I have c plus 5k equals 25. And that doesn't allow me to solve anything yet, but I can plug in my other point, which is 0, 0. So 0 equals c, and then when I plug in 0 for x, I just know c equals 0, because the rest of this stuff's going to be 0. So if c equals 0, then 5k equals 25, so k has to equal 5, and c is 0. So I go to rewrite my equation now with the values in it. So y equals 0, and then I have 5x minus x squared. And usually we want to write that as negative x squared plus 5x, so we can use our... So now it's just a parabola problem. And I have one more thing to find. If I know that the axis of symmetry is in between those two zeros, and I know x is 2.5, I can plug in 2.5 for x and find my y. So all I do is plug that in. So you can simplify that, finish the answer. The second question on here, you can see a little bit, it's more straightforward. They actually give you the whole equation. It says find the coordinates of the local max or min of the function. This actually can be done using calculus or algebra. This is just saying find the vertex. So negative b over 2a, plug in your numbers, good to go. Axis of symmetry, you got the x equals... So the x-coordinate gives you this last answer. You can also on your calculator, you know it's a parabola that opens up. You could graph it and calculate the min. Next equation. Let's see if I can move this down. It says get the graph of a quadratic function intersects the horizontal axis at 1, 0. So I know I have a point at 1, 0. The equation of the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. So the axis of symmetry would be over here. That means I have another 0. This is 2 away. I have another 0 that's 2 away over here. So I have another 0 at negative 3, 0. So it says write down the x-coordinate of the other point where the graph intersects the horizontal axis. So I have that. It's negative 3, 0. It reaches its maximum value. Maximum means the parabola is negative. I'm just adding to my sketch, and I know that it goes all the way up to 5. So I know this point, the coordinate is negative 1, 5. So it says write down the value of f of negative 1. It's just 5. Find the range of the function. So the function goes, it's a parabola, it goes forever in one direction. So it's going from negative infinity to 5. You could also write that as y is less than or equal to 5. So kind of decoding what you got to look for in the picture. Okay, so I have a generic parabola. Again, I have a point here at 4, 0 and a point at 0, 0, which means my axis of symmetry goes right down the middle of those two. So that's x equals 2. I'm not even reading the question yet. I'm just looking at what do I know. So it says write down the solutions to the function. The solutions are the x-intercepts, but just the x-coordinate. So 0 and 4. Write down the equation. This is important. It's got to be an equation of the axis of symmetry. A lot of people just write 2. It's x equals 2. So that's an equation. The equation f of x equals 12. F of x is the same as y. So y equals 12. Has two solutions. One of these solutions is 6. So right here I have the point 6, 12. And that is 2 away from my 0. So if I go 2 away from my 0 over here, I'm at negative 2, 12. I have symmetry. That's the axis of symmetry. Helps you find all that stuff. It says use the symmetry of the graph to find the other solution. So x equals negative 2. It says the minimum value for y is negative 4. Write down the range of f of x. That means this coordinate here is 2, negative 4, which makes the range negative 4 to infinity, or y is greater than or equal to negative 4. This is a stats question, and they're giving you a continuous table. So we don't know the individual values in here. We just know the different ranges. So I'm thinking I'm going to be estimating if I have to find averages or standard deviation. We use my calculator. So it says state the modal group. That's the group that has the most values in it. So that would be 45 less than or equal to t less than 60. So there's 41 values. Use your graphic display calculator to approximate the values of the mean and standard deviation. Okay, so to use your calculator, you need to enter in two lists. You have list 1 and list 2 in your calculator. So you go to Stat, Edit, and we don't know the values, but to do an estimate, we're going to use the midpoints. So I'm going to take the midpoint of 0 to 15, the midpoint of 15 to 30, the midpoint of 30 to 45. You might see a pattern. We're adding 15 here every time. And keep adding 15. And so we don't know the individual values, so we're estimating by using a midpoint. So this is going to be your list 1. And then list 2 is going to be these numbers, which are the frequencies for that. So we don't know what's in that first interval. We're going to assume that they're all 7.5 and there's 21 of them. And we're going to assume that there's 32 22.5s, and your calculator can do, you could do this for the mean by just taking 7.5 times 21, 22.5 times 32, 37.5 times 35, etc. You could do that, but we need to not have to do the standard deviation that way, which is a real pain. So you want to go to one variable stats. You're going to calculate one variable stats, and depending on your calculator, you might type list 1 comma list 2. If you have a TI-84, it's going to ask you for the list, and then it's going to say frequency list. And your frequency list is list 2. So it's counting these as the frequencies. The thing is, you got to be careful of is if you use your one variable stats. Another point, if it's just a single list, you don't want to have list 2 with anything in it. You want to have that clear. You don't want to have this frequency list with anything in it at all, or it'll screw up your calculation. The other mistake people make is they think, oh, there's 2 lists, I'm doing 2 variable stats. This is just one variable stat. So that'll give you your mean and standard deviation. You can do a fully labeled histogram. I'm not worried about that. Just make sure you don't have spaces in between, and that your interval would be 0, 15, 30. So the values should be on the graph in a nice even manner. Okay, last one here. I'm going to skip this one. This is basically saying put it in vertex form. So find the vertex and plug stuff in. And well, I'm going to have to do that. Find that to be able to do the second part. So let's go ahead and find it. Opposite of B, so 12 over 2A. So the x coordinate of the vertex is 2. The y coordinate would be 3 times 4 minus 12 times 2 plus 11. So 12 minus 24 is negative 12 plus 11 is negative 1. So this would be 3x minus 2 squared minus 1. So now we have it in the form that we want. This is our vertex form. And it says you take that graph and translate it 3 units in the positive x direction. So basically that means our vertex is now 5 and 5 units in the positive y direction. So we moved negative 1 plus 5 is 4. So that's our new vertex. Find the function for the translated graph. So nothing else changes except the vertex. And it doesn't ask you to graph it. Sometimes it will. But we shifted essentially 3 to the right, which makes this a little bit more negative. But if you're finding the vertex. So when they give you all these letters, don't get confused. Try to plug in points. Do what you normally would do without the letters. And that's it.